Hello and welcome to a new episode of your program, Bible Diggers. The New Testament is considered the collection of books that has the most number of manuscripts ever compared to any other book existing. The New Testament has at least 25,000 manuscripts. 5,000 of them are in Greek, 10,000 are in Latin, and less than 3,000 in Coptic language, besides the other languages as well. The earliest of these manuscripts returns back to the mid-2nd century, which is very early compared to the time that the New Testament was written. There are some terms as well we use when we describe the New Testament. For example, we use in Arabic the word Injil. Injil is coming from the Greek word Evangelion, which means the good news. And the good news is the Lord Jesus Christ rose from the dead and ended the authority of sin and death over humanity. We use also the term gospel in English. And the term gospel comes back from an Old English word or an Old English term called Godspell. And Godspell means a story about God or the words of God or God's talk. Also, we use the word Bible. And the word Bible is originally coming from its Greek origin, ta Biblia, which means the books. And this term, ta Biblia or the Bible, was first used by St. John Chrysostom at the end of the 4th century. Now we focus on the Gospels. The writers of the Gospels did not write their names. There is no signature in any of the Gospels. But the Church Fathers identified these writings because they heard them orally before. And that's why the testimony of the early Church Fathers, basically the Apostolic Fathers, is very important to prove that these are the authentic and the original writings of the apostles. So, for example, St. Clement of Rome, who died in the year 93 AD, is witnessing that those are the Gospels written by the apostles. And the same happens with Papias, Bishop of Hierapolis, around the year 125 AD, and also as well St. Irenaeus of Lyons, the disciple of St. Polycarp, Bishop of Smyrna, disciple of St. John, who has a testimony about the writings of the 4 Gospels around the year 180 AD. When scholars examined the first 3 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they witnessed that, or they noticed that they are similar. That's why we have some term called the Synoptic Gospels. The Synoptic Gospels is a term that describes the first 3 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. The Gospel of St. John is a little bit different and contain events that are not existing in the first 3 books. The first 3 books or the Synoptic Gospels contain almost the same events, similar narrative, and so on. So the scholars had to understand or have to put some theories to understand why these similarities are existing in those 3 Gospels. There are 2 major theories that can try to explain the concept of the Synoptic Gospels or the similarities between those 3 books. The first theory is called the 2 Gospel theory or the Grace Buck hypothesis. This theory claims that the book of St. Matthew was written first, and then the book of St. Mark is a shorter version of the book of St. Matthew. And this theory is okay with some of the old traditions that assume that the book of St. Matthew was written first and there was a version of it in the Hebrew language. That's why all the manuscripts and the old manuscripts put the book of St. Matthew in the first order of all the Gospels. The problem with this theory is if the Gospel of St. Mark is a shorter version of the Gospel of St. Matthew, why St. Mark removed some important narratives, like for example the narratives of the infancy, like for example the Lord's Prayer, like for example the appearances after the resurrection. That's why the scholars had to find another theory that explains the Synoptic Gospels. And the other theory is called the 4 document hypothesis or the Markan priority. This theory assumes that the book of St. Mark was written first, and it is short, 16 chapters, and then later on St. Matthew and St. Luke had their own unique sources, had an extended version of the book of St. Mark, and it ended up in the versions that we have for St. Luke's Gospel and St. Matthew's Gospel. And according to this theory, the Gospel of St. Mark comes first, so not like what we have in order in the Gospel today, and it was written almost around the year 55 and 60 AD. And this is the most common theory that is taken into the world of academia nowadays. These similarities between the three Gospels was also noticed in the writings of the early church fathers. For example, Eusebius, the bishop of Caesarea, wrote a letter to Carpianus describing that there are similarities between those three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and he gave examples for the similarities. The same also in the letter that Saint Jerome in Palestine wrote to Damasus, Pope of Rome, and he also described some similarities between the three Gospels, and he mentioned some examples. This was another introductory episode about the New Testament. Wait for us in the next episode of your program, Bible Diggers, so stay tuned.